Hello again and welcome to another edition of Looking at Social Justice. I am so glad that we're able to do this at the diocese because each week I'm able to meet some very interesting persons who can share some very important conversation with us, some very important information about their work and how it impacts us. Today is a real treat for me because we have Samuel Molina, who happens to be the California State Director of Mi Familia Vota. Mi Familia Vota is a nonprofit organization especially serving the Latino community, the Hispanic community in these states: Arizona, California, Colorado, Florida, Nevada, and Texas so far. It's a group that began in 2000 and has expanded its base tremendously. I just want to say one or two statistics and let Samuel take over. There are 39% of our state of California is Latino. Very important that we as a diocese address the Latino reality. There are 6,919,000 eligible Latino voters at this point in our state. There are 4.5 million Latino millennials. And finally, Latino legal permanent residents, 1.5 million. These are the people that we need to be working with, helping, supporting, and making them feel more comfortable in their work and in their state, they're living in our state. Samuel, tell us a little bit about what it is you're doing at Mi Familia Vota regarding this upcoming election, regarding the environment, regarding immigration, and regarding any issue that you think we should talk about today, Samuel.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jim, for having me on the show, and thank you to the diocese for making this happen. You know, what we're doing towards this election right now, you know, in each of our states, we're continuously registering voters. That's what made Mi Familia Vota different since we started. It was always about growing, you know, the electorate and growing political power for the Latino and immigrant community. And so every year, whether it's an election cycle or not, we're always registering voters. So we're doing that in each of our states and, of course, here in California. And I think it's important to mention that here in California, we're in Fresno, Modesto, and Riverside, but, of course, have partners statewide.
Now, what's great about it is that we have a local coordinator, Giselle Gasca, but actually, as state director, you are right here in Fresno. That must be great for being able to know that it's in Fresno that the state sees the need to base its director.
Well, I'm born and raised here, and I have never left Fresno, so I think that was one of the reasons why. You know, my predecessor was actually in Riverside, doing a lot of work between Riverside and Los Angeles. But you know, now again, I'm covering all three of the same regions, doing a lot of traveling between Sacramento and Los Angeles. But you know, it is pretty significant to be here.
So what will you want to tell us about the sense as we look at the date we're recording this program is, what is it, the 26th of September. How are we looking with registrations? How are we looking with the energy of the Latino vote?
So there's a lot of enthusiasm. Yesterday was National Voter Registration Day. We were on Edison High School, Washington Union, Modesto Junior College campus. We were at San Bernardino State yesterday. So, you know, I think we registered over 200 people in one day. So there's a lot of enthusiasm. We had a lot of volunteers. I think we had about 20 volunteers helping register people to vote, registering their peers. You know, over the last 18 months, we've seen an enthusiasm from the young individuals, you know, from the high schools and colleges coming out in droves, just really ready to participate in this election, right? We saw that, you know, out of Florida after the unfortunate shootings, but we had been a partner with March for Our Lives in the Road to Change. You know, again, going from Florida to Texas, coming here into California, a lot of momentum there, a lot of people supporting it, and we're just really glad to see that people are finally starting to wake up and realize that their vote really does matter and that the vote, you know, not voting has consequences.
Now, one thing about this group that I found out on the website, you have like 7 pillars that you are thinking when you organize, you've got to engage these groups. That would be schools, there would be local networks of businesses, faith organizations like ourselves, media outlets, community organizations, local consulates of immigration sending countries, and labor unions. Do you want to pick on any of those 7 pillars where it is that Mi Familia Vota is really making tremendous solidarity, that you're getting a good response, that you're finding tremendous unity and community building? Of those 7, what are some that are really in high gear?
Well, you know, it would vary from state to state and region by region, and especially from my executive director's role, right? So I would say from my own personal experience and everything that I've done here in Fresno, I've gotten a great relationship across the board with all kinds of partners, you know, with you included, with elected officials, finding a lot of strength in the educational institution, working with our local high schools, and also the media. We have a really great relationship with the media, and I'm very proud of that and what we've been able to do. So every partner is important, and the reason why we have those, what we call the siete patas, the reason why we have that is because it's a full comprehensive approach. We have to make sure that we're working with everyone to empower our communities, and it's going to take everyone at the table to make it happen.
Being honest, the Latino community is basically, at least nominally, Catholic. How are you finding the response in any Catholic settings, in the idea of a response from the Catholic community? How's that working out?
Well, we haven't exactly done a lot of work with the churches as of late, so I don't have the best answer for that. You know, I think there was a time when we had made approaches, but we found ourselves, you know, when we first started, we have to revisit the issue.
Which we are doing today,
Yes.
Because it's so important that we just had this Quinto Encuentro, and we had 3,000 people meeting in Texas from all over the country over Hispanic reality, Hispanic faith, Hispanic future. And obviously, Mi Familia Vota is definitely in the areas that you are working to mobilize, educate, and empower, would not be at odds with what is the direction of a community moving forward.
Right. So your question?
So my question would be, regarding voting, what would be some things that right now, if this is the deadline item on your agenda, how do we help you? How does the community respond? What can we do to get out the vote?
I think there's several things that, you know, your organization would be able to do, and many others. Is we want to make sure that everybody understands what's coming up in this election, right? The issues and some of the important deadlines, right? So October 8th is the day that the vote by mail ballots start to go out here in California, right? 30 days prior to the election. So October 22nd is the last day to register to vote. So we want to make sure that the community understands that, and that you know, in certain counties, especially throughout California, they are now piloting a program where all voters go to a vote by mail system. So that's Madera, Napa, Nevada, Sacramento County, and I forget the 5th one, but 5 of those counties are piloting it. So they've gotten rid of their polling locations, but everybody will receive a vote by mail ballot, and that's important for voters to know as well. The other thing that we're looking forward to is in 2020, more counties will be able to opt in to this vote by mail system. So we want to make sure that, you know, voters are aware of it and that they're interacting with their election officers, you know, the registrar of voters, because, you know, when people receive their vote by mail ballot, they're 80% more likely to vote. So right next to us in Madera County, they had a higher turnout of voters because everybody received their vote by mail ballot, right? And so it's a beautiful thing.
Before we move on to any of the other 5 areas that are definitely part of your to-do, as Mi Familia Vota, it's not only about voting. There are other ways to be civically engaged. Anything else you want to talk about voting, voters' rights, and the election? Or do we move on to another issue? Do you want to stay on this for a little bit, because this is the deadline item?
So one of the other things I want to make sure that we point out is that last year we worked with Asian Americans Advancing Law Caucus, Asian Americans Advancing Justice Law Caucus. Last year it was called Assembly Bill 918. It was about expanding language access for all. So individuals who you know, limited English proficiency, or maybe native Spanish speakers or Chinese speakers, however, if their county meets the threshold, I think it's a 5%, 3 or 5% threshold, then the county would be obligated to give that person what is called a facsimile ballot. So it's essentially a copy of their voter ballot, but in their language, and they can use that as an example to when they have to vote at the polls, and so it can kind of guide them and give them direction. So that's important for voters to know because, you know, prior to this law being passed, it was rather difficult for voters to receive a facsimile ballot. You know, you could go into a polling location and the ballot would be over here, or the facsimile ballot would be over here, but you're voting in your polling booth over here. So it didn't allow you the same privacy as other voters like ourselves get to take advantage of. So this is very important. It was great that this law passed because now they can receive it in their polling booth and use it as guidance.
Is there any other legislation that you would want to say was a great success in terms of voter enhancement, the sense of franchising voters, getting them to be able to vote more easily? In California recently, is there anything we want to commend the legislature for or kick them in the butt for?
Well, aside from Assembly Bill 918, you know, automatic voter registration in California, I'm glad that that went into play earlier this year. So now if you're, you know, if you get your California ID or driver's license, you'll automatically be registered to vote. It's an opt-out system, but you have 21 days to opt out. But more people will be automatically registered to vote, so that's a great thing. And then also, I think one of the bigger wins was allowing 16-year-olds to pre-register to vote. That was a great win. A lot of people still don't know about it, but in California, you can pre-register to vote if you're 16 years of age.
And when you pre-register, you can't vote. But what happens? You get like put in line where...
That's pretty much what's going to happen. They're going to
cool.
hold your voter reg form, and once you turn 18, they process it, and you'll be registered to vote.
Do you know that people are taking advantage? This is really good.
Oh, of course they're taking advantage of it because we're at their high schools registering them to vote.
So that's what you've done with these, when you said you went to Edison and things, it's getting sometimes 16-year-olds.
16 to 17-year-olds,
Oh, this is great.
Yeah,
because otherwise you're waiting till you're 18 and then you miss the deadline and then you're just not in line. This is wonderful.
That's right.
Good. So maybe we could move on to the other areas, because when you hear a thing like Mi Familia Vota, you figure, oh, it's definitely Spanish language stuff, and it's definitely voting. I see the word vota. I'll send you to one place. MiFamiliaVota.org is where you'll find all that Samuel is talking about today and many, many other things. It's a very great website, MiFamiliaVota.org. I'll throw some issues at you right now, and you pick up the one you want to do. We've got workers' rights. We've got education. These are big priorities. We've got the environment. We've got health care, immigration, voting rights, which we've covered, civic engagement. These might be areas that you might want to talk about. I'm thinking the environment.
That's right. You know, the environment is very important. You know, across the country, we're seeing droughts. Here in California, we've been in, especially in the Central Valley, we've been in drought conditions for over 10 years. You know, Governor Schwarzenegger had, I believe, made executive orders to address the drought. You know, Governor Brown had put us in a state of emergency where a lot of regions were in water restriction, and then they had their water restrictions lifted, except for the Central Valley. We continue to see people, I think even in the city of Stratford, you know, don't have access to clean water, are still struggling with that. We have, you know, an area, you know, on the west side of Fresno that doesn't have access to clean water, just like Flint, Michigan. And there was a report that came out from Reuters last year saying that in the west side of Fresno, there's a community that has even higher lead rates in their water supply than Flint does. And so, you know, it's very important that we're paying attention to these issues and that we're trying to resolve them. The presidential administration, as of late, is trying to repeal something that President Obama had done, which was make vehicles have higher fuel efficiency and get more miles to the gallon. And this is retroactive, right? We definitely want to have cleaner air for our children and for for Californians and of course for all Americans. I'm an asthmatic myself, born and raised here in Fresno. We have some of the worst air conditions. I was a runner, so I remember what it's like there to run in the heat. I ran for 11 years. And this is just something that we don't see is taking us forward, right? You know, we want to make sure that we have cleaner and more fuel-efficient cars. And so we spoke at a panel on Monday in downtown Fresno at the Grand, and the Attorney General, Javier Becerra, was there, you know, making a statement, standing up for Californians, because this is a real problem. You know, climate change, poor air quality, poor water quality is affecting everyone. And if we don't start doing something about it, then it's not going to get better. And you know, one of the things I want to point out, and I made sure to point it out at the panel on Monday, and when I was speaking in February in San Francisco, is that climate change is the #1 national security threat.
Oh yeah.
And the military has said it over and over again, and even Congress implicated it in the passing of the National Defense Authorization Act in 2017. They know that climate change is real. They know it, but they need to do something about it. And they need to do something about it.
Speaking of doing something about it, tell us just a little bit more about that hearing that was one of 3 national gatherings in the whole country. Fresno was one of them.
That's right.
And I think Dearborn was another one, and then there was something in Florida or somewhere. And you were there, but also Alicia Contreras was there. And in the B, there was a comment or a remark that she was very well citing over her intervention on her panel. Do you want to tell us about Alicia, who she is, and how Mi Familia Vota is not just about voting, even though it just seems that, well, that's the obvious go-to place. It's about issues concerning our people, all of us. What did Alicia say, and why was that important?
So Alicia is actually our national organizing deputy director. She was our former Nevada state director for some time. And, you know, actually, the B quoted it. She says, you know, we think about the environment and what these rollback changes are going to do and how to affect Latino families. One of the things is that, like you said, Mi Familia Vota, a lot of us think of us as a voter education and outreach advocacy, but we're very much an organization that advocates on behalf of the Latino immigrant community. So those 6 pillars that you covered earlier, those are the things that we believe are priorities for the Latino community. You know, across the Central Valley and here in California, we have the highest Latino population. And in the Central Valley, a lot of our environmental issues are affecting Latino communities, and that's how we kind of prioritize what we're working on.
Now, another item besides the environment is immigration, separate from voting, but connected to voting because we want immigrants to vote. What work is Mi Familia Vota doing, especially in the area of immigration?
So we do work national, state, and local levels, right? So we can be doing something at the school board level, city council, county, and then of course with our state legislature. So something that we've been working on, and we've always been working on it, is trying to get comprehensive immigration reform, right? Something that puts people on a pathway to citizenship. And then what we see is a piecemeal approach with the DREAM Act or the USA Act, which both had failed, even though they had a lot of bipartisan support. Continuously working on those bills, trying to figure out a solution for those who are here, especially those who, you know, as individuals call them dreamers or DACA recipients, finding a solution for them to get a pathway to citizenship. So we're always constantly meeting with congressional representatives, trying to do something. My boss is in D.C. Ben Monteroso is always advocating for, you know, resolutions at the national level. In California, myself and my team included, you know, supported SB 54, met with legislators on Senate Bill 54, which was the, wow, I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Do you recall SB 54, 2017?
We had benefits going, what was it? I'm not.
Sanctuary state. It was a sanctuary. It was
which
called the sanctuary
became
state.
so contentious because it turns out that California winds up being in favor of protecting immigrants.
That's right.
And the national appeal or approach is quite not SB 54. It does not honor the desire of any group to be protective of their immigrant community.
You know, and we were very supportive of that. We want to make sure that people understand that the reason why that legislation was important is because we want our communities interacting with law enforcement. We need to make sure that individuals are reporting crime, because what happens is then they become targets and the situation for them becomes exasperated. And if they don't feel safe interacting with law enfortement and reporting crimes, then we have a real problem with what's going on in our society, and we don't want that. So SB 54, you know, we supported it and got behind it. Here at the local level, we've been working with our elected officials, the city council members, to try to form an immigrant advisory committee which we've invited you to be a part of, and you graciously said yes. So we've been trying to work on that for a year, and the plan is to get to an Office of Immigrant Affairs, something like what they have in San Jose, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, because we need to address the immigrant community's needs at the local level. Even if, as some individuals will say, immigration is a federal issue, it's very much still localized. We need to do something about it.
Everything, as they say, is local when it comes down to when push comes to shove. Now, I do remember that invitation, and I have the notes here, because San Jose, evidently, from what you sent me, is the model for this civic, economic, linguistic, and social integration of the community. What might be the progress with what you're trying to do here in Fresno, Samuel? How's that moving?
Well, we have 15 organizations that have signed on that are ready to be on board. Now it's a matter of myself and a few elected officials sitting together and saying, how are we going to roll this out, and then bringing those 15 orgs together and saying, this is what we're going to do and this is how we want to move forward.
Well, since it is that we are knowing that we mentioned earlier in the program the need for the Catholic community to be participant in many of the things that are going on with Mi Familia Vota and the Latino community in the Valley, looking forward to hearing more, because it was an easy acceptance of the offer. And now let's see, do you have any projected time when this may actually be the first meeting we'll have?
I would hope the first meeting is going to be in October. That's what I want.
This is great. So next month, but by the time this program is airing, we may be meeting and finding out the other 14 groups and what we're doing. What kind of a response are you getting from the city? So is it basically the city or the county that you're working with?
A few city council members.
Who has been the most, let's say, supportive and participatory in your efforts? Who's been, like, who do we want to give kudos to?
Well, the first council member that we started working with was Councilman Luis Chavez. And Esmeralda Surya is very supportive, and so is Councilman Baines. Those are the three council members that we're working with to try to get this off the ground and going.
Well, I'm looking forward, because that looks like something that we can say, oh, what's the next thing that we could do? Not only is propelling people to start registering if they haven't, voting this year. If you're 16, you heard from Samuel, hey, I could actually, what's this pre-registration thing? You can do it. Find out. Go to the website, mifamiliavota.org, to find out what's going on at Mi Familia Vota. What else might you want to say about immigration, or do we move to one more of your 6 issues that you work with?
What I'd like to say, about immigration is that we have a real responsibility to take care of the children that are coming from across the border. It's unfortunate that this administration has moved to trying to detain children for more than 20 days or indefinitely. Recently, they put out a public comment period for the community, for the country to basically respond about how they feel with the removal of the Flores Agreement. Right now, law states that children shouldn't be detained more than 20 days. They're trying to repeal that so that they can detain them indefinitely. So we want individuals to go on there and make sure that they make their voices heard, provide that public comment, because children shouldn't be detained so long without their parents, and we have a responsibility to make sure that we're speaking up.
One thing is, when something is a hot item maybe a month ago, our attention spans are very short, and we wind up finding out, oh, the big thing now is what's going on in the Supreme Court. So we forget that certain things are still in play, still unresolved, and still there is a chance to be very aware of, well, that's a continuing problem, that's a continuing issue. So let's keep that in mind, that the tension and this separation of children is still a major unresolved problem of the administration.
That's right. One
other area that's on your to-do list, and we didn't mention the word yet, we're going to do a program on it with another guest from Faith in the Valley, is health care. Tell us about where Mi Familia Vota is also involved in health care.
So where we are also involved in healthcare is defending the Affordable Care Act, right? After the ACA passed, more than 4 million Latinos benefited from the Affordable Care Act. Here in California, we were part of a healthcare coalition called Having Our Say, which is comprised of, I believe, more than 12 organizations. So we signed on to a lot of progressive healthcare legislation. We were, supporters of healthcare for all, which unfortunately didn't make it through the legislature. But we're still looking at ways on how we benefit all individuals and ensuring that they have insurance. Because, and this is a statistic that's rather old. It's about 3 or 4 years old, but I got it from when I was in a meeting, and one of my colleagues from the United Way stated, for every $1 of preventative care, yields $3 in savings. So we know that if we're starting to take care of people's issues from the beginning, we're going to save ourselves a lot of money as taxpayers, as Californians, and as Americans, if we're just taking care of the issue right then and there, as opposed to allowing it to get worse. So we got to support healthcare. We have to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
One other item that we didn't mention the word, but I know it's just part of that whole network of things you do, workers' rights. Mm-hmm. A word on that commitment you have. Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is that what we would see if we were to pass comprehensive immigration reform or legislation that protects workers' rights, such as, because a lot of times people are taken advantage of because of their status, right? Even if they're Visa card holders or if they're undocumented, not getting paid those the wages that they're entitled to, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to pass legislation so individuals are not being taken advantage of, have access to sick leave like they should, are getting paid their wages like they should, at least minimum wage if that's where they are, because it's not right for employers to take advantage of their employees.
The very last issue I think I'll just say this right now. Mm. There are issues about education. Mm. There are issues about workers' rights and the environment, healthcare, immigration, voters' rights, all about civic engagement. In 30 seconds, Samuel, how do you want to make your last thought about why people need to get connected to Mi Familia Vota?
So people should get connected to us, learn more about what we're doing, and we're seeing consequences across the country as to why if we're not showing up to vote. And so I would hope that they would find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They can find us on Mi Familia Vota and www.mifamiliavota.org. Don't forget, Election Day is November 6th, so make sure you're registered to vote before October 22nd and vote.
I want to thank Samuel Molina, the California State Director of Mi Familia Vota, lives right here in Fresno. Want to look forward to be working with Giselle Gasca, who is the local coordinator. Please become connected, involved with Mi Familia Vota. Till next time, take care.